哈利路亞啊！奉主耶穌基督的聖名，我哋一齊嚟分享聖經嘅道理。
In the name of Lord Jesus, we begin sharing the words of God.
首先係非常之感謝神嘅恩典讓我係再次有機會同大家嚟咧就係敬拜神。
Thank the Lord's grace that I haven't been given another opportunity so that we can worship God.
今天咧同大家係分享嘅題目咧叫做基督耶穌嘅好執事。
Well, the title for our mutual encouragement today is A Good Minister of Jesus Christ.
我哋可以先睇下呢個係提摩太前書嘅第4章。
Let's turn to 1 Timothy chapter 4.
提摩太前書嘅第4章，我哋睇呢個係第6節。
1 Timothy chapter 4 verse 6.
提摩太前書嘅第4章嘅第6節。
1 Timothy chapter 4 verse 6.
奉主耶穌基督聖名讀聖經。你若將這些事提醒弟兄們，便是基督耶穌的好執事，在真道的話語和你們向來所服從的善道上得了教育。請讀。
Verse 6. If you instruct the brethren in these things, you will be a good minister of Jesus Christ, nourished in the words of faith and of the good doctrine which you have carefully followed.
喺呢個提摩太前書裏邊啦咁保羅啦係嚟到係教導呢個年青嘅傳道人啦提摩太啦點樣嚟到係牧養神嘅教會。
So in the book of Timothy, Paul instructs the young Timothy on how to look after the church.
當中嘅佢對提摩太教會嘅工人有個期待，佢希望佢哋啦能夠做基督耶穌嘅好執事。
So one of the wishes that Paul wished for was that the young minister Timothy would be a good minister of Christ.
咁樣，當我哋未睇咩叫做基督耶穌嘅好執事之前，咁你就先要知道就話，究竟呢個係所謂嘅執事，佢哋嘅工作係做乜嘢啦？
So before we look at what is a good minister of Jesus Christ, we need to know what is the role of a minister.
如果我哋睇《使徒行傳》嘅20章嘅28節嘅話。
If we look at Acts chapter 20 verse 28.
咁呢度話到啦聖靈立你哋作全群嘅監督，你們就當為自己謹慎，也為全群謹慎，牧養神的教會，就是他用自己血所買來的。好，呢度保羅係同以弗所嘅長老佢哋咁樣講。
So Paul here tells the overseers of Ephesus, and he says.
咁話啦，神讓你哋成為教會嘅監督，係為咗咧要嚟到係牧養神嘅教會。
And he says to them, you have been made overseers so that you can be the shepherd of the church of God.
咁樣呢度所講到嘅教會就係嗰啲係用神屬耶穌基督嘅寶血所買翻嚟嘅人啦。
And the church of God are those who have been purchased with the blood of Jesus.
所以從呢度俾我哋係知道一個執事佢哋所做嘅工作應該係乜嘢。
So from this we can see what is the role of a minister.
就話佢哋需要咧係嚟到係牧養呢個係信徒，牧養神嘅教會就係呢個係信徒。
So their role is to shepherd the church of God, which is to look after the flock.
咁當我哋係成為係教會嘅工人或者執事又好，長老又好，咁我哋要非常之清楚知道。我哋所做嘅工作係乜嘢？
So if you are a minister of Jesus Christ, whether that is a deacon or an elder, you need to know what your role is.
咁就話需要咧係牧養神嘅教會，照顧呢啲係信徒啦。
That is to shepherd the flock of God, which is the members in the church.
咁當我哋係做呢個工作嘅時候，我哋嘅心態應該係點樣呢？
And when we do this role, what should how should we behave?
咁我哋英文聖經裏邊講到呢個係執事嘅時候，佢用係 minister 就一個係被按立嘅聖職人員一樣啦。
So in the English version, when we talk about minister, it is a deacon that's been ordained.
咁樣其實喺英文嚟講啦，其實佢都要可以用呢個所謂 deacon 就話呢個執事呢個字嘅。
So therefore, in English, minister and deacon can be used interchangeably.
所以無論係一個執事又好，或者一個被按立嘅工人都好。
So whether it is minister or deacon.
咁佢哋都需要咧係牧養神嘅教會。
Then their role is to look after the flock.
咁當我哋做嘅心態啦，咁我哋就好似一個執事一個俾按立嘅工人嘅態度嚟到去做啦。
So therefore, we need to have they need to have the attitude to look after the church members.
因為呢個字即係呢個 minister 又或者係 deacon 呢個字啦，其實佢嗰個所謂嘅原本嘅字根啊，the root of the word 係僕人嘅意思啦。
Because both the words minister and deacon, the root is one who's to
serve.
To serve.
所以係神係揀選你做執事又好，長老又好，咁其實咧你係神嘅僕人，你需要咧係服侍教會嘅信徒。
So therefore, whether you're a deacon or an elder, then your role is to look after the church members.
就嚟到係服侍佢哋啦，好似僕人一樣。
And to serve them as though you are a servant.
咁所以當我哋係做呢個工作嘅時候，我哋要用一個係非常之謙卑嘅態度嚟到去做。
So when you have this role, you need to be very humble.
唔好以為我哋係執事啦，我哋係被按立嘅工人啦，我哋就好似咧係高高在上。
And not to think that because you're a minister, so therefore you are above the rest.
咁我哋要記住，我哋只不過係神嘅工人而已啦。我哋係要嚟到係服侍人，唔係受人嘅係服侍。
So we must remember that we are to serve others and not others to serve us.
咁呢個係我哋要特別去留意嘅一件事啦，
So this is something to bear in mind.
咁樣跟住我哋就用呢個係提摩太前書嘅第5章嚟係講呢個係牧養嘅工作。
So for today, we will look at 1 Timothy chapter 5 for our mutual encouragement.
咁你發現牧養嘅工作裏邊咧，有一個咧係比較我哋話係艱難嘅工作，就係咧係當係事情係關於係人事嘅問題嘅時候。
So in this chapter, it talks about one difficult situation, which is interpersonal relationships.
就話喺教會裏邊有好多唔同嘅信徒。
That is to say, in the church, there are many different types of members.
咁身為神嘅工人，我哋點樣嚟到係對待佢哋呢？
And as ministers in the church, how should you treat them?
一方面我哋話要教導佢哋。
So on one hand, you say that you need to teach them.
另外一方面，我哋又需要嚟到係輔導佢哋。
Or to counsel them.
咁我哋希望咧，佢哋能夠喺信仰上係能夠係成長啦。
And that is so that they can mature in their spirituality.
但係好多時，當係啲事情係關乎係人事嘅時候，
Often when the matter is about interpersonal relationships,
就變成咧係比較係複雜啦。
then it becomes very complex.
而且咧亦都好似好難嚟到係處理一樣。
And it seems very hard to deal with.
但係喺呢個提摩太前書嘅第5章裏邊咧，係保羅啦俾我哋一啲非常之好嘅教導。
In 1 Timothy chapter 5, Paul tells us very good methods.
咁第1節至到係呢個第2節，
So in verse 1 and 2.
咁呢個係保羅要提醒我哋嘅喺教會裏邊，我哋待人嘅時候一個大嘅原則。
It talks about the principle on how to deal with people.
首先你發現啦，喺教會裏邊每一個人咧，都係我哋家裏邊嘅人。
First point is that everyone in church is our family members.
咁我哋知道保羅話，如果我哋信耶穌啦，我哋洗禮啦，我哋進入教會，我哋就唔係外人，我哋咧係神家裏邊嘅人啦。
And because we know that once you have been baptized, you are not outsiders, you are a member of their family.
所以喺教會裏邊，我哋相處嘅時候咧，我哋真係好似一家人咁樣嘅。
So therefore, when we are within the church, we are part of this one family.
咁呢個係我哋第一個要認識到嘅事情啦，
So this is the first thing that we must recognize.
尤其是當你係遇到人事問題嘅時候。
Especially when we have interpersonal relationship problems.
我哋知道好多嘅外邊嘅嗰啲公司啦，佢哋都有一個所謂人事部。
So we know that in the world, a lot of companies will have HR departments.
咁呢啲所謂嘅人事部嘅總係處理係人事嘅問題嘛，嗬。
And the HR department is to deal with issues between different colleagues.
並且話，如果呢個工人係犯錯嘅話，咁佢就需要啦嚟到係責備佢又好，或者處理佢嘅事情又好啦，嗬。
So, for example, if they have broken company rules, then the HR department will be the ones to deal with what consequences there are.
甚至咧最後咧可能真係需要咧係炒呢個人魷魚啊。
So, or even to the extent that they need to be fired.
但係我哋知道教會咧，佢唔能夠係咁樣嘅。
But of course, in church we cannot do this.
如果我哋教會裏邊好似外邊啲公司咁樣，我哋話帶領嘅人就好似係人事部嘅人嘅話。
So if we were to say that the church is like a company outside and the ministers in church are like the HR department.
咁你發現咧，嗰啲係員工咧，通常對呢啲人事部嘅人啦，呢啲主管啊，都唔係咁中意啦。
But we know that in any given company, the HR department is not often favoured.
因為佢哋呢啲人都係將係嚟到係對付我哋嘅，處理我哋嘅。
Because they often are the ones that will deal with us or against us.
所以喺教會裏邊，我哋需要咧有一個咁樣嘅認識。
So therefore, in church, we need to have an understanding.
雖然我哋話有負責人會，有執事，有長老。
So even though we may say that there is the church directive board or there's deacons or ministers.
但呢啲人咧並唔係話係嚟到係要嚟到係對付我哋嘅人，或者要嚟係處理我哋嘅人。
But they are not people who are having to deal with us or to deal with any given situation.
咁我哋對佢哋嘅態度咧，唔應該咧係存在一個有敵意嘅，覺得佢哋唔好，佢哋咧係處處咧係針對我哋。
So therefore, we should not have a negative view or feel that they are against us.
反而咧，我哋要明白大家都係一家人啊。
But rather, we need to have the understanding that we are part of the one family.
咁喺教會裏邊嗰啲係所謂我哋話係做帶領嘅，負責人會執事長老。
So in the church, where we talk about those who are leading in the church, that is the ministers, the church directive board, or even elders in the church.
咁當佢哋係對信徒嘅時候，處理信徒嘅問題嘅時候，我哋要知道佢哋係我哋嘅兄弟姊妹。
So when they are speaking to us or they are dealing with a given situation, we need to understand that they are our brothers and sisters.
所以呢度係特別係講到喺教會裏邊，如果我哋需要係對待一啲係比較年長嘅弟兄姊妹嘅時候。
So it says here that if we are to speak to older members in the church.
咁我哋咧要好似咧對待佢哋咧，好似我哋嘅父母一樣啦。
Then we need to speak to them as though they are our father.
我哋呢度咧係中文聖經嚟講啦，我哋唔能夠咧係太過嚴厲咁樣嚟係責備佢哋。
And it says that not to rebuke an older man.
反而咧我哋要勸佢哋啦。
But rather to exhort him.
咁呢個兩個係唔同嘅事情咯。
So these are two different things.
同樣呢個人可能係犯咗錯。
So the situation, perhaps this person has committed sin.
但係因為佢係比我哋係年長嘅。
But because they are older than us.
雖然我哋係教會嘅執事或者係教會嘅帶領人。
So even though you yourself are a minister or you are someone who is leading in the church.
你唔能夠咧嚟到係責備啦，用一個非常之嚴厲嘅態度咧嚟對呢啲所謂比我哋年長嘅弟兄姊妹。
Then you cannot rebuke this member because they are older than us.
反而咧，我哋需要咧嚟到係勸誡啦，就係憑著一個係愛心嚟到勸導佢哋，希望佢哋咧能夠係悔改歸向呢個真神。
But rather we need to exhort them and have a heart of love so that they can repent and return back to God.
咁佢對嗰啲係差唔多年紀嘅，或者係年紀係比我哋係細嘅人咯。
And what about those who are roughly about the same age as us or younger than us?
咁呢度話咧，要對佢哋好似弟兄姊妹一樣啦。
It says here that we need to treat them as brothers and sisters.
咁呢個係我哋要明白嘅一件事。
So this is something that we need to understand.
就話當我哋講到係弟兄姊妹嘅時候，
So when we say brothers and sisters,
咁一家人咁最一個好嘅一個圖片係咩啦？
what is the best picture within this family?
就話呢家人咧能夠係和睦係共處啦。
It is that within the family there is harmony.
就好似呢個詩篇裏邊所提到嘅。
Just as it says in the book of Psalm.
就話如果弟兄姊妹能夠和睦同居嘅話，係何等嘅善，何等嘅美啦！
How beautiful it is for the family to live in harmony.
咁你發現一家人大家都能夠係和睦共處嘅，唔單止大家都覺得係非常之好，非常之溫暖。
So if we find that there is harmony within the family,
唔單止係非常之溫暖，覺得係非常之好。
it is very good and joyful.
而到咧係能夠咧係讓呢個係所謂嘅家庭咧係能夠係興旺啦。
And also you'll find that this family will prosper.
就好似教會裏邊大家都非常之係和睦嘅，就能夠同心合意興旺呢個係福音啦。
In the same way that if everybody can be harmonious and they work together so that the gospel can prosper.
所以身為係信徒嘅，
So as believers,
當我哋係睇呢啲教會嘅工人長老又好，執事又好，甚至係負責人會嘅信徒都好啦。
So when we are faced with ministers or our brethren or anyone who's leading in the church,
咁我哋要對佢哋咧，好似我哋嘅弟兄姊妹一樣啦。
then we need to look at them as though they are our brethren.
唔好當佢哋呢啲係人係高層嘅，你係 in management。
And not to view them as someone who's in management.
因為如果你咁樣睇嘅時候，
Because if you view it like this,
咁你會發現咧，呢啲人咧專係嚟到係管我哋嘅。
and you view that they are ones who deal with us.
佢呢個事唔準做，你要幾時做呢個，俾好多我哋嘅規矩要我哋嚟到去遵守。
In other words, they tell us when we can do this or we can't do it and give us many rules that we need to follow.
咁樣嘅話咧，你發現咧好多時咧，信徒對呢啲係所謂負責人有一個非常之負面嘅睇法。
If this was the case, then you would see the leaders in church in a very negative way.
但如果我哋大家都知道，原來我哋大家都係兄弟姊妹啦。
But rather, if we all view each other as brothers and sisters,
咁我哋就咧好容易咧能夠咧係傾偈，好容易咧嚟到係和睦嚟到係共處。
then we will be able to speak with one another and we can live in harmony.
所以呢個係我哋今日需要去明白，亦都需要去追求嘅一件事。
So this is something that we need to understand and something that we should pursue after.
就話喺教會裏邊，我哋係一家人。
That is to say that within the church we are one family.
唔單止我哋要和睦共處。
Not only do we need to have harmony amongst us,
我哋要需要咧係彼此係相愛啦。
then we also need to love one another.
咁耶穌話：你哋彼此相愛，人哋就認得出你係我嘅門徒啦。
And Jesus said, if we have peace and love amongst us, then people will know that we are his disciples.
呢個就係耶穌基督對我哋嘅要求。
So this is the expectation that Jesus has of us.
喺教會裏邊，我哋係一家人。
That is, within the church, we are one family.
所以當我哋係處理一啲所謂人事嘅問題嘅時候咧，我哋要從一家嘅精神嚟到去做啦。
That is, so when we have interpersonal issues that need to be dealt with, then we see each other as one family.
咁樣你就發現咧，唔會啦喺教會裏邊又唔會有所謂嘅紛爭，亦都唔會又係結黨嘅事情。
And then within the church, we would not have division or have infighting.
因為如果呢啲負責人係專係對付我哋嘅，咁我哋就唔同佢哋玩啦，或者唔聽佢哋嘅話咯。
Then we will not have the view that the leadership in the church are against us, so we don't want anything to do with them.
又或者係教會嘅負責人對信徒咧，應該係有一個憐憫嘅心，知道係佢哋係我哋嘅長輩，係我哋嘅弟兄姊妹，就唔會咧好嚴厲啦嚟到係責罰或者係嚟到處理佢哋所犯嘅錯誤。
And on the side for ministers and leaders in the church to have compassion and to show love so that we're not dealing with our brethren in a harsh way.
好，咁呢個係一個大概嘅一個 general principle 啦，總規啦，嗬。
So this is the general principle in this section.
OK， 如果我哋睇第3節開始，至到係呢個係第16節嘅話
If we look at verse 3 to verse 16.
咁呢度係特別係講到係點樣嚟到係對待嗰啲係寡婦嘅事情。
It talks specifically about how to treat widows.
咁就話喺當時啦教會裏邊可能真係有好多嘅寡婦。
It may have been at that time that there were many widows.
咁呢啲寡婦咧需要啦係教會嘅幫助或者係教會嘅愛心嘅接待。
And they really needed the help from church and the various ways to help them in their lives.
所以當時嘅教會咧應該係有啲所謂嘅項目啦，係專係嚟係幫忙嗰啲係寡婦嘅。
And at the time in the church, there were many different ways in which the widows were helped.
但喺呢度係強調當我哋係做呢個工作嘅時候咧，我哋要認清楚呢啲寡婦咧係真係嘅寡婦。
But it says here that when we are helping those who are widows, we need to make sure that they are truly widows.
咁當然我哋會問寡婦唔通有真有假咩
？So we may ask ourselves, can there really be true and false widows?
但係呢度講到就話，所謂真假婦，即係講到嗰啲係真係需要係幫助嘅人啦。
So when it says here true widows, it's asking whether these widows really need the help.
所以佢有好多嘅條件嘅
There are certain criteria here.
咁呢啲係符合呢啲條件嘅人咧，先至可以受到教會嘅幫助。
And only those who fulfill the criteria were the ones that the church were to help.
又或者係符合呢啲條件嘅寡婦咧，佢哋先可以咧係申請教會嘅協助。
Or those who fulfill the criteria were able to apply for help from the church.
譬如話呢啲寡婦你要點樣咧？佢年紀咧已經係60歲以上嘅。
So one of the criteria is that the widows should be over 60 years old.
咁另外就話呢啲寡婦咧，佢冇自己嘅兒女，亦都冇人咧嚟到係幫助佢嘅。
And second one is that these widows are not to have their own children or anyone else who could help them.
咁第三呢啲寡婦咧，佢哋係熱心敬拜神嘅人。
And thirdly, these widows are to be fervent workers in the church.
問題就係話點解有咁多所謂呢啲嘅條件啦？
So the question is, why are there these criteria?
就係為咗要確保所謂教會嘅愛心咧，唔會被人哋係利用啦。
And this is so that the love of the church was not to be misused.
譬如話一個係年青嘅寡婦。
So for example, a young widow.
其實佢自己係可以係工作嘅。
That in actual fact they can work themselves.
但係咧，佢偏偏唔去揾嘢做啦。
But they rather not.
佢就申請教會，請教會咧嚟到係幫助。
And so they ask for help from the church.
咁樣你發現咧，如果係咁樣嘅話咧，其實咧佢係利用緊教會嘅愛心，讓自己咧係唔需要係工作。
So if this is the case, they are misusing the love from church so that they do not need to work.
咁當一個年青嘅寡婦，佢唔需要工作嘅時候，亦得到教會嘅幫助啦。
And if this person were to receive help from the church,
就變咗啦，佢有好多嘅時間，空閒嘅時間，乜嘢都唔使做嘛。
And what this means was that they will have a lot of free time.
咁13節講到咧，佢就變成點樣啦？
And in verse 13, what happens with people like this?
佢話佢哋咧變成咧係習慣咗啦，係懶惰啦。
It says that they learn to be idle.
因為有教會係照顧佢哋，一日三餐都照顧佢哋，所以佢哋就唔需要工作，所以佢哋乜嘢都唔做。
Because the church were providing for all their daily provisions, so therefore they don't work.
所以多咗好多時間出嚟。
And therefore they have a lot of free time on their hands.
咁做咩咧？
So what do they do?
佢哋挨家閒遊啦。
They wander from house to house.
就好似我哋今日咁樣如果係時間多嘅話，我有時去下邊個屋企，有時去下邊個屋企。
And so for us, it might be, for example, if we have free time, we'll go to so-and-so's house or to another person's house.
咁其實呢個唔係問題啦。
So this in itself is not a problem.
問題就係當我哋去到 A 嘅屋企嘅時候，我哋就講 B 嘅壞話；去到 B 嘅屋企嘅時候，就會講 A 嘅壞話。
The issue is if we go to person A's house, we talk badly of person B, and we go to person B's house and we talk badly about person A.
所以呢度講到咧，佢哋係咩啊？説長道短啊！
It says that they are gossipers.
跟住咧，亦都係管人哋嘅家事啦。
And they are also busybodies.
所以為咗係唔好讓啲靈青假婦變成教會嘅一個問題。佢哋亦都唔合乎呢個所謂申請教會幫助嘅一個條件嘅話，咁佢哋就話呢啲嘅寡婦咧應該咧係再嫁啦。
And so therefore, to avoid this situation for these widows, it's better for them to remarry.
讓佢哋咧有一個係有正常嘅一個係生活，唔會造成教會嘅一個負擔。
And so that they can have a normal family life, and so they will not become a burden on the church.
咁講到呢件事情嘅時候，其實我哋係睇到嘅話，當係處理一啲事情嘅時候啦，佢哋係有啲所謂嘅有個制度喺度嘅，there's a system.
So we can see from this situation that there is a system in place.
咁當處理事情嘅時候，你需要咧有一個方法，點樣嚟係處理。
So in dealing with any given situation, there needs to be a system in place to what to do.
咁你係面咗啦，係為咗咧要知道嚟到係幫助邊啲需要幫助嘅人。
And the aim is so that you know who it is that you need to help.
亦都咧係防止教會嘅愛心或者係教會嘅資助咧係被人咧嚟到係濫用。
And it is also to avoid the resources in church to be misused.
咁當你有一個制度嘅話
when there is a system in place,
咁你發現咧係處理嘅工人咧就唔會咧係有偏差啦。
and it also helps the workers in church not to go astray.
就話好多時處理人事嘅問題嘅時候，如果你冇一個制度嘅話啦，咁你發現咧呢個人啦，譬如我係呢個工人嘅，咁我會隨着我嘅喜好咧嚟處理呢一件事情。
So if there was not a system in place, then the worker would deal with a given situation according to what they feel.
如果呢個寡婦係我嘅親戚，
So for example, if this widow is my relative,
佢唔合乎所有嘅要求嘅，
and if they do not meet all the criteria,
因為佢係我親戚嘛，
but because this widow is my relative,
所以佢申請嘅時候我就覺得 OK 冇問題啦，教會應該幫助佢。
and when they apply for help from church, I will say, oh, it doesn't matter. Of course they will get it because they are my relative.
咁樣咧變咗呢個工人咧就變咗唔公平、唔公義啦。
In that case, that particular worker is not being fair and is not judging the matter righteously.
所以身為教會嘅一個工人，
So therefore, as the minister of in church,
當我哋係處理人事嘅問題嘅時候，
when we are dealing with any interpersonal situations,
神對我哋基本嘅要求就話我哋要公平公義。
the minimum requirement from God is that we are fair.
我哋睇佢呢個第5章嗬。
If we look at chapter 5,
提摩太前書嘅第5章，
1 Timothy chapter 5,
我哋睇21節。
verse 21.
我在神和基督耶穌並蒙揀選的天使面前祝福你，要遵守這些話， 不可存成見，行事也不可有偏心。請讀一下。
I charge you before God that the Lord Jesus Christ and the elect angels that you observe these things without prejudice, doing nothing with partiality.
所以人事嘅問題最基本嘅話就係身為處理事情嗰個人咧，係唔應該咧係有成見或者係偏心。
So the most fundamental requirement in terms of dealing with interpersonal situations is that the person who's dealing with it does it without prejudice and without partiality.
咁最好嘅方法就話每一個人都嚟到係遵照呢個指引嚟到去做，遵照呢個所謂嘅制度嚟到去行事啦。
So therefore, everyone who's dealing with any of the matters should do so according to the system in place.
咁樣就唔會咧係讓我哋咧用感情用事，或者係用私人嘅感情咧嚟係處理唔同嘅事情。
And so that is so we can avoid any problems of how to deal with a situation where we put our own thoughts into it.
好，咁我哋就繼續睇另外一段好。
And we'll look at another passage.
咁呢個17節開始啦，亦都係講到係人事嘅問題，係講到呢個點樣嚟對待呢啲係所謂嘅執事或者係長老。
In verse 17, it talks about the elders and the leaders.
咁呢度開始就講到話呢啲所謂嘅管理教會嘅人啦，佢哋應該咧受加倍嘅敬奉啦。
So it starts with the elders who rule should have double honor.
咁呢個係咩意思啦？
And what does this mean?
喺當時嘅教會裏邊，可以係講有兩樣事情。因為呢啲係長老，佢哋係忠心嚟到係侍奉呢個係教會呵。
So the elders at that time were leading the church in and doing it according to what is right.
所以佢哋咧會受到信徒嘅尊重。
And because they are faithful, then they're seen with honor by the members.
咁第二咧係教會咧，亦都會喺錢財上咧嚟係幫助佢哋嘅生活。
And secondly, they were also helped financially by the church.
咁呢個係應該嘅。
And this is right.
就好似保羅所講嘅，當你有一隻牛叫佢喺度踩個谷嘅時候咧，你唔能夠咧係揞住佢嘅口啦，你要俾佢咧喺做工作嘅時候咧有嘢食啦。
So just as Paul says, you shall not muzzle an ox while it is treading the grain. That is to say, while someone is working, they should be fed.
咁呢個係我哋應該對教會嘅工人嘅一個基本嘅態度，要尊敬佢哋，亦都需要咧喺呢度係，如果係真係有需要嘅話，亦都需要幫助佢哋嘅生活。
So this is our fundamental thinking in terms of how we should treat the workers in church. That is that they deserve honor, but also if the church is able to help them, assist them financially.
咁當然我唔係只係講係全職嘅傳道啦，
Of course, we're not talking about necessarily the full-time workers.
咁教會裏邊嘅執事又好，或者係長老又好，甚至教會嘅負責人都好啦。
And this is the case for whether it's deacons, elders, or leaders in the church.
咁佢哋攞個心出嚟係為教會侍奉，應該係值得我哋係尊敬嘅。
Because they have the heart to serve God, so therefore they are deserving of honor.
如果真係喺生活上係遇到係困難嘅話，教會咧亦都應該啦係願意啦嚟到係周濟嚟到幫助呢啲有需要嘅工人。
And if they were to face financial hardship and the church is able, then the church should also help them financially.
因為本來教會就有咁樣嘅一個所謂愛心嘅工作嘛。
Because this is the principle of love within the church.
咁但係有一件事情，我覺得係我哋要留意嘅。
There is something that we need to pay attention to.
教會能夠咁樣幫佢哋，或者信徒能夠係尊敬佢哋，係因為佢哋係一個好嘅執事。
The reason why they should have honor and to have help from the church is because they are a good worker.
因為呢度係講到啦，嗰啲係勞苦傳道教導嘅人嘅，更當如此啦。
And it says here, especially for those who labor in the word and doctrine.
就話人哋對你嘅尊敬，或者教會對你嘅幫助，係因為你真係一個非常之好嘅工人。
And so therefore, in other words, if you, it is because that you are a faithful worker in the church, therefore you are worthy of the honor or any help from the church.
所以話到咧，我哋話教會嘅信徒應該係識得尊重呢啲係教會嘅聖職人員。
So in other words, the church should honor those workers of the church.
但係咧，呢個工人咧，佢要明白我哋需要係得到人哋嘅信任咧，係因為我哋真係有好嘅榜樣，真係咧係一個好嘅一個工人啊。
But from the point of view of the worker, we need to understand that we should only have honor because we are a good worker and we show good conduct.
唔係因為話我係執事，所以無論我點樣都好，你都要尊敬我。
And it is not the case that just because you're a minister, so no matter what I do, people have to honor me.
人哋要尊重你係因為你值得人哋尊重啦。
That is to say, you others honor you because you are deserving of honor.
其實呢個係身為神嘅工人要去追求嘅一件事情。
So therefore, this is what the ministers in church should pursue after.
我哋唔係話命令人哋你一定要尊重我。
So we cannot command others to show honor to you.
反而咧，我哋行事為人咧，要得到人哋嘅尊重。
But rather, in all our conducts, it is worthy of honor.
喺聖工上，你係非常之殷勤，能夠為信徒留下一個好嘅榜樣。
And that in the church works, you leave good examples, so others will honor you.
咁我哋睇佢呢個19節啦。
Let's look at verse 19.
19節係講到控告長老嘅事情。
Verse 19, it talks about accusations against an elder.
就話，如果當有人係嚟到係控告呢啲所謂嘅聖職人員或者係教會嘅工人嘅時候，
So if someone were to accuse an elder or a minister in the church,
咁呢度講到啦話咧，除非係有2、3個人做見證啦，如果唔係嘅話，我哋就唔需要收呢個控告嘅呢封信啦。
So unless there are 2 or 3 witnesses, then you do not receive this accusation.
點解咁樣呢？
And why is this?
因為你哋發現呢啲帶領嘅人啊，
And we find that those who are in the leading roles,
佢哋咧都常常咧會喺信徒嘅所謂嘅眼光裏邊，信徒嘅眼光咧都係會擺喺佢哋嘅身上噶啦。
And I would see that they are often looked at by the other church members.
所以好多時你發現佢哋喺生活裏邊或者喺教會裏邊嘅言行舉止啦，如果係有乜嘢係唔妥嘅話咧，咁信徒咧會嚟到係講，有時甚至嚴峻到咧，佢哋會控告。
And because they are in the eye line of the church members, so whenever they speak or anything that they do, they will be seen by everyone and therefore can be accused.
但係如果係每一次有一個人對呢個人係有成見嘅，所以佢無論佢見到佢做乜嘢講乜嘢都好，佢都會控告。如果係咁樣都接納嘅話咧，咁你發現咧教會真係好唔得閒啦。
But if every time someone is accusing a church worker and every single one of those are taken on board and are investigated, then church will be very busy.
所以佢哋有一個條件就話，你需要咧有2、3嘅人一同嚟到係作證，即係話大家都認同佢呢個執事真係做錯咗呢件事。
So therefore, it says here that you need to have 2 or 3 witnesses so that they are in agreement that this minister has done something wrong.
所以就唔係變成一個個人嘅一個攻擊啦。
So therefore, it does not become a personal attack.
係就大家信徒都係覺得呢個執事或者呢個長老佢真係有行差踏錯。
So that, in other words, it is only when there are others who have witnessed this and they feel that this minister has done something wrong.
咁樣呢度講到佢係一個 accusation， 一個係控告嘅嘢嚟嘅，佢係即係正式嘅一個控告啦。
So here it talks about an accusation, so it's an actual act that they are accusing him of. 所以就話，如果今日嚟講啦，並唔係我哋好似信徒之間閒談
喺度講下呢個執事曾經做過乜嘢，或者呢個長老曾經係做過乜嘢，而係真係嘅，真係將個事情咧係好清楚嘅寫清楚，跟住有人去作見證，跟住咧係真係嚟係交上俾去教會。
So therefore, this is not just brethren sitting talking about how this deacon has previously done this or done that, but rather someone has seen something happen and it is documented and agreed by others.
所以係一個非常之嚴重嘅事，所以呢件事情咧要非常之謹慎啊。
So this is a very serious matter, and it is something that we need to be watchful of.
並唔係好似一班人坐喺度講下呢個執事嘅壞話，講下呢個傳道嘅壞話而已啦。
So it's not just a case of sitting down and bad-mouthing this deacon or that preacher.
所以當我哋真係如果係為咗教會好，我哋真係見到一啲帶領嘅工人，佢哋真係行差踏錯嘅話，咁我哋需要好正式嚟去做呢一件事，而且咧亦都係有其他人嚟到咧係證明嘅。
But rather, if you see a minister doing something that is wrong, and there are other witnesses to agree, and you put forward this for the betterment of the church.
所以並唔係話教會嘅信徒唔能夠咧嚟到係講執事嘅壞話，而係咧當我哋係做呢件事嘅時候，我哋需要非常之正式、非常之謹慎。唔好咧，只係我哋係講人是非，或者係我哋話中文嚟講啦，就話喺雞蛋裏邊咧係挑骨頭啦。
So this is not just to talk about the bad points of a minister, but it is a very serious matter and something that we need to be very careful of.
唔好就係隨意咧嚟到控告神嘅工人。
And not to casually accuse a worker of God.
咁有啲人會覺得，如果係咁樣嘅話，咁你哋呢啲所謂神嘅工人，呢啲帶領嘅人，咪好似冇人可以係處理佢哋咯？佢哋變咗好似係 untouchable 咁樣咯。
So some people might think, well, in that case, you cannot say anything against the ministers because they are untouchable.
但係之後嗰一節就講到啦，
But then the next verse it says,
20節
verse 20.
話犯罪嘅人將佢喺眾人面前咧係責備佢，叫其餘啲人咧也可以懼怕。
Those who are sinning rebuke in the presence of all, that the rest also may fear.
就話如果有人真係有一幫人，佢已經係正式嘅嚟到係控告某一個工人，而經過係調查之後，呢個工人咧佢都會承認佢犯錯啦。
So in other words, if a certain member have been, there's been an accusation and it's been proven to be true, and this person also agrees that this is the situation.
咁樣教會咧就需要咧喺眾人面前嚟到係責。
So in that case, then the church needs to deal with this matter in the presence of all.
咁當我哋講到喺眾人面前嘅時候，就唔好話整個教會嘅人嘅面前啦，
So when it says presence of all, does not mean every single person in the church.
就話因為教會裏邊佢有一啲嘅制度。
But rather there is a system in church.
就話教會呢個工人處理佢哋咧，就係我哋話職務會或者係負責人會喺呢一班人面前咧，需要咧嚟係將個事情係講清楚，亦都指出佢嘅錯誤喺邊度。
But in the presence of all means within the system, which is the church board or the directive board.
佢讓佢哋知道咗呢件事情啦，就需要咧嚟係作出一個處理啦。
So the situation will be explained fully, so that they know how to deal with this matter.
唔能夠因為佢係一個聖職人員就咧係我哋話隻行開隻眼閉啦，
And we cannot be because this person is a minister, then we deal with it with our eyes half closed.
咁當我哋係處理咗之後，你要需要咧係將呢個事情咧係講俾其他人知道，或者讓教會係知道，跟住咧免得啦，讓其他人咧亦都有個喺教會裏邊咧有個敬畏神嘅心啦。
And so thereafter, in having dealt with this, so that other people in the church needs to know, and that is so that we have the right fear of God in our faith.
所以你發現處理人事嘅問題都係同樣係有一個所謂嘅制度喺度嘅，嗬。
So therefore, when we deal with interpersonal situations, then we also need to have a system in place.
就話每一個人都照住呢個係制度嚟到係做事。
And therefore, everyone needs to follow the system in place.
就唔會因為個人嘅感情、個人嘅關係咧，就影響我哋嘅判斷啦。
And so that we can avoid dealing with any given situation according to our own feelings or our own relationships.
好，咁樣我哋就去到22節，咁呢度有個事情叫做同人行按手禮，唔可以急促。
In verse 22, it talks about not to lay hands on anyone hastily.
咁英文聖經 lay hand 就覺得就係純粹係講到按手啦，嗬。
So here it talks about laying of hands.
其實喺中文聖經裏邊咧，佢係一個按手禮，所以佢係一個 ordination，就話按立呢個人做執事或者係做長老。
So this laying of hands is for an ordination, so that they become a minister.
咁行按手禮嘅時候，佢話呢度你唔好太過急促啦。
Here it says not to be hasty.
咁係咩意思咯？
So what does this mean?
原來喺呢個提摩太前書第3章嘅時候，當佢揀選工人無論執事又好、長老又好，佢哋要需要咧係滿足一啲嘅條件嘅。
We find that in 1 Timothy chapter 3, there are criteria in choosing ministers.
喺其中，除咗話係佢哋有好嘅品德之外
apart from having good conduct,
咁佢哋亦都需要咧係謹守呢個係道理。
They also need to follow the gospel.
亦都需要啦，識得嚟到去教導呢個係信徒。
And they need to know how to teach the members.
咁另外有2條嘅就話啦，嗰啲係初日教嗰啲咧，就唔能夠按立做執事或者長老啦，嗬。
Now, 2 other criteria, that is, it cannot be someone who's a new member.
咁另外嘅就話咧，呢啲人咧要經過呢個係試驗。
But also so that they have gone through trials.
意思就話咧，呢啲人咧係經過時間嘅考驗，大家都證實啦，佢唔係真係手洗咗，馬上就被按立為長老，而係過咗一段嘅時期，大家都覺得佢係一個好人值得咧係按立，先至嚟到去按立。
That is to say that they have gone through the test of time. That is, they have gone through various ways in knowing, and so that they are attested as true members.
OK， 如果有人係希望按立一個係唔符合條件嘅人做執事嘅話
，So if there is someone who wants to choose a minister who does not fulfill the criteria.
咁你身為其中嘅一個係所謂嘅工人嘅話，咁你就唔好急促嚟到係決定就贊成，好，我哋就按立佢啦。
So therefore, as a minister, you yourself cannot hastily choose this other person.
就話對按立呢件事情咧，你需要非常之謹慎。呢啲所有嘅被按立嘅人咧，都要符合呢啲嘅條件，你先至去做。
So in other words, you, as the person who's ordaining a minister, you must make sure the person that's to be ordained fulfills all the criteria.
因為如果你佢唔查清楚，就盲中中去做嘅嗬，咁呢個人其實係冇達到嘅標準嘅話咧，咁呢度講咧，你就咧喺別人嘅罪上有份啊。
Because if we are casually choosing people to be ordained as ministers, then it says in the verse, you share in their sins.
所以你同樣發現，無論係處理呢個係工人嘅問題，又或者係按立工人嘅事情，佢哋同樣咧係有一個制度喺度嘅。
So we can see here, no matter if it's dealing with the sin of a minister or in choosing a minister, you must there is a system in place.
就好似點樣嚟對待呢啲寡婦一樣，同樣係有個制度。
So in the same way that there is a system in place to deal with the widows in church.
所以當我哋係講到人事嘅問題嘅時候，
So therefore, when we're talking about interpersonal issues,
咁我哋係用制度咧嚟到係決定，
then we need to follow the system to decide the matter.
唔好咧用自己個人嘅感情嚟到去做事。
And not to deal with the matter according to our own personal feelings.
因為如果我哋用人嘅感情去行事嘅話咧，
Because if we use our own feelings to deal with the matter,
咁你就好容易咧變成咧對人咧係有成見，或者咧係會偏心啦。
otherwise you will show partiality and prejudice in the way that we deal with things.
咁我覺得呢個係一個非常之好嘅一個指引，就話當我哋係處理人事嘅問題嘅時候咧，我哋都有一套所謂嘅SOP 啦，就一個所謂一個制度點樣嚟去對待某啲嘅事情。
So therefore, it is a very good thing to have a system in place so that you can deal with all the given matters.
而唔係咧係睇邊一個人去做，咁你發現咧可能唔同嘅人所帶出嚟嘅結果咧就唔一樣啦。
And not to look to see who we are dealing with. Otherwise, we will end up with prejudice and partiality.
咁呢個係所謂人事嘅問題喺教會裏邊，我哋話係非常之複雜嘅原因就係咁樣。
So this is one of the reasons why we say that interpersonal issues are very complex in the church.
因為每一個人我同你嘅感情唔一樣，或者我同你嘅關係亦都唔一樣。
Because our relationship with any given members are different.
但如果我哋係以制度行事嘅話咧，我哋就唔會咧係因人而異啦。
But if we follow the set system, then we will not deal with any given situation according to our relationships.
咁我覺得呢個喺牧養當中咧係要非常之去小心嘅一件事。
So this is something we need to be very careful of when we shepherd the flock.
所以我覺得呢個保羅喺呢度所講嘅就係第5章裏面所講嘅提醒，其實係俾身為教會裏邊工人啦處理事情嘅一個非常之好嘅一個借鏡。
So therefore, this is a very good image that we should follow in Paul has set out in chapter 5 for the ministers in church.
點樣嚟到咧係對待教會裏邊嘅信徒。
And how to lead the membership within the church.
讓我哋所做嘅每一件事情都係公平、公義、公正嘅。
And so that how we deal with any given situation, so that it is fair, without prejudice, and without partiality.
感謝神，咁我哋嘅分享就到呢度。
Thank God, that ends our sharing.
我哋就嚟到係唱詩。
Let's sing hymn.
現在我哋係教會報告。
Now is the church announcements.
請學生們執事。
We asked Deacon Simon.
哈利路亞，奉主耶穌聖名作教會嘅報告。
Hallelujah. In the name of the Lord Jesus, we have our church announcements.
願各位弟兄姊妹在家中平安。
May God give peace to all our members at home.
有教會嘅報告。
So church announcements.
第一件事就係重複上個星期所報告嘅。
So first announcement is a repeat announcement from last week.
就係有關呢個明天所舉辦嘅紐卡所教會姊妹團契線上聚會。
So first is the announcement for our the tomorrow's service.
當日就係會喺呢個 Zoom 平台舉開呢個姊妹團契。
That is our sisters fellowship, which will be held on Zoom.
呢個平台嘅連結咧已經喺呢個姊妹面書嗰度咧已經或者有關嘅 WhatsApp group 群組咧已經播放出嚟咗啦。
So the link for that has already been posted on the various groups like Facebook as well as various WhatsApp chats.
請各位姊妹留意聽日嘅聚會時間就係下午1點鐘至2點45分嘅。
So may all our sisters bear this in mind. It starts at 1 o'clock until 2:45.
第二件事報告就係本年度第30屆全國姊妹靈修會嘅報告。
A second announcement is for the National Sisters Sisters Fellowship.
將會喺呢個網上 Zoom 平台舉開。
Which will also be online on Zoom.
主題係婦人嘅使命。
The name of the theme is the role of sisters
The mission of women.
The mission of women.
就會以呢個英文同埋呢個粵語嚟去主講嘅。
Which will be led in English and Cantonese.
日期係喺呢個6月27號至28號，即係星期日至到星期一嘅。
And this will be held in June the 27th to 28th.
時間係早上9點30分至到下午5點鐘嘅。
And the times are 9:30 till 5.
需要報名嘅，截止日期咧係5月30號。
And the deadline for to sign up is May the 31st.
請各位姊妹眾組報名參加。
So may all the sisters please sign up quickly.
詳細內容咧嘅報名嘅網址咧，請瀏覽呢個姊妹團契嘅呢個面書嘅網頁。
So for any further details, please look at the Sisters Fellowship Facebook page.
如果有咩問題，抑或有需要幫助或者協助呢個網上報名咧，請同呢個當地嘅姊妹團契嘅任何一個負責人聯絡。
And if you need any further assistance, please speak to any of the Sisters Fellowship coordinators.
當有2日靈修會咧，有2堂有見證會嘅。
During this time, there will also be sessions for testimonies.
如果各位姊妹有需要作見證嘅話咧，請同喺呢個5月30號之前咧，同呢個本區嘅姊妹團契人負責人聯絡嚟去登記。
And if anyone wishes to testify, please also speak to any of the Sisters Fellowship coordinators before the end of May.
第三件事情報告就係話，下一次嘅呢個線上報道會就係喺呢個5月29號，即係下個星期六。
So the next online evangelistic service is on the 29th of May.
呢次嘅報道會嘅所用嘅語言咧係用英語同埋粵語嘅。
And the languages that will be spoken is English and Cantonese.
時間係晚上7點半至到晚上9點30分嘅。
And it will be from 7:30 to 9:30 in the evening.
主題係更豐盛嘅生命。
The topic is a more abundant life.
主講係由呢個陳尼西弟兄。
The speaker is Brother Nisi Chin.
懇請各位同齡邀請未曾送主嘅親戚朋友同埋呢個同事嚟去參加。
Please, all church members to invite your friends and colleagues to join.
想要參加嘅話咧，請盡快同呢個宣道系嘅負責人聯絡。咁佢哋咧就會以呢個當地嘅網上連結咧嚟去傳送俾各位。
And if you speak to the EPG coordinator so that they can forward the link to you for anyone who wishes to join.
亦都懇請各位弟兄姊妹為今次嘅線上報道會代禱。
And also, if we can all pray for this event.
讓更多人知道神嘅福音。
And so that more people can know the gospel.
使到呢個報道會能夠順利進行。
And so that the evangelistic service can go ahead smoothly.
而家係代禱事項。
Intercessions.
懇請為利斯特教會石慧珍姊妹代禱。
Please pray for Sister Laura Sheck of Leicester Church.
呢位姊妹就係何天來弟兄嘅妻子。
She is the wife of Brother Dave Ho.
佢話佢咧就尋日咧就去醫院睇呢個報告，證實咗佢有呢個乳癌嘅。
So yesterday she had a confirmation that she has breast cancer.
佢會喺呢個下個月6月2號咧做呢個切除嘅手術。
And on the 2nd of June, she is to undergo an operation.
求主耶穌施恩憐憫，讓一切嘅手術順利進行。
And we ask for God's guidance and peace so that everything can go through smoothly.
能夠早日康復。
And so that she can recover quickly.
第二件代禱事情就係話懇請繼續為本會嘅廖子樂弟兄嘅女兒廖樂兒小妹妹代禱。
And second intercession is for Evelyn Liu, who is the daughter of our brother James Liu.
因為佢目前咧呢個叫做鎘鹽咧，呢個叫做氯化鎘咧，呢個指數咧較為偏低嘅。琴日入咗醫院嚟去做呢個觀察。
So she was admitted into hospital yesterday because it's the second time she has shown low potassium in her blood.
所以請各位同靈嚟去繼續嚟去為佢代禱，求主憐憫佢，醫治佢，讓呢位小妹妹能夠平安出院。
And so we ask that God can quickly heal her of the problems that she may have, so that she can return home quickly.
第三個報告就係話請為新打龍教會何房祿弟兄代禱。
And the third intercession is for Brother Wanlock Hope of Sunderland.
因為最近佢有呢個長期水腫同埋加上呢個貧血嘅事情。
So he has an ongoing swelling due to fluid retention as well as red blood cell deficiency.
而且需要喺呢個醫院咧接受呢個輸血嘅。
And he also needs to have a blood transfusion.
所以懇請各位弟兄姊妹繼續或者要為呢個何房祿弟兄嚟去代禱，求主耶穌憐憫醫治佢。
And so we need to pray for Brother Ho so that God can have mercy and so that he may be healed.
感謝主耶穌，今日教會報告同埋代禱事項到呢度，而家將呢個時間交翻俾呢個公房傳道。
So that ends our church announcements and intercession. Let's return back to Preacher Johnny Lee.
Amen.
Amen.
哈利路亞，感謝神。
Hallelujah, thank God.
我哋係聽咗好多嘅報告，遇到好多代禱嘅事項。
So we have heard of all the church announcements and the intercessions.
咁當然一切嘅事情都喺神嘅手中，所以我哋要嚟到係專心嚟到係依靠神。
So everything is in the hands of God, and so therefore we need to place everything in His hands.
除咗話係求神係幫助或者係帶領幫助弟兄姊妹，或者係帶領啲聖工之外。
So apart from asking God to help all our brethren and or to guide the church works,
我哋亦都係祈求神係讓教會嘅工人都能夠成為基督耶穌嘅好執事。
And we also ask God so that all the ministers in church can become good ministers of Jesus Christ.
讓教會係能夠興旺，讓聖工係能夠得到發展。
And so that the church works can prosper.
讓神係得到呢個係榮耀。
And so that God may be glorified.
我哋奉主耶穌基督嘅聖名，我哋同心禱告。
In the name of the Lord Jesus, we will kneel down to pray.